Hi there, I'm Aileen. 15 years ago, my parents cut me out of their lives, told everyone I walked away, but I didn't. They pushed me out, quietly. They erased my name from the will, faked a DNA test to say I wasn't my mother's daughter, and gave my future to my sister. Now I've returned, not for revenge, but with receipts. They invited me back for a wedding, but they didn't expect me to show up successful, or worse, for them, unafraid. And when I spoke, the whole room fell silent. The envelope was thick, cream-colored, weighty, and so pristine it didn't look like it belonged in my mailbox. No return address, just my initials. A.S. Inked in the kind of handwriting I hadn't seen in over a decade. Elegant, controlled, familiar enough to freeze me mid-step in the hallway of my apartment building. I stood there for a moment, blocking the doorway, groceries hanging from my wrist, my heart not racing, just holding. It wasn't fear. It wasn't curiosity. It was recognition. Like someone whispering my name in a language I'd spent years forgetting. By the time I got inside, I already knew what it was. Not because I'd received anything like it before, but because no one in my family sent anything without a purpose. I set the bag down, peeled the flap back, and there it was, an invitation. Hand-pressed gold trim. Grand Solace Hotel, Seattle. Delphine Shipman and Kenneth Bianchi cordially invite you to their wedding. Delphine, my sister, Kenneth. The man who once looked me in the eye, in front of 6 venture capitalists, and reduced my work to cute potential. That was 2017. I was 28, hungry, pitching a community-based health model for underserved cities. He was polished, powerful, and dismissive. "You've clearly put thought into this," he'd said, tilting his head like I was a middle schooler reciting a science fair speech. "But maybe give yourself more time. You're still figuring out who you are." No investment, no follow-up, just that look, the kind you give someone you've already written off. And now he's marrying Delphine. I dropped the invitation on the counter and stared at it like it might catch fire. No personal note, no explanation, just a request for my presence, as if the last 15 years hadn't happened, as if I hadn't been cast out of that family like a stain on their perfect white linens. I hadn't heard from them since the day I walked out of our Chicago home with nothing but a duffel bag and a voicemail from my mother telling me not to come back unless I was ready to behave like a real daughter. Whatever that meant. And now this, not an olive branch, not even a breadcrumb. This wasn't forgiveness. It was strategy. They needed me there. For appearances, for optics. Aileen, the forgotten sister, reappearing in the background of some posed wedding photo to sell a fantasy of reconciliation. I picked up the invitation again. Delphine's full name, Dr. Delphine M. Shipman, embossed in cursive. She was always the star, the one who smiled just right, who sat with her knees crossed and her voice steady, who wore ambition like perfume. And me? I was the storm they kept out of the photo frame. I texted Ethan, my husband. "I'm going." He replied in under 10 seconds. "You sure?" I didn't blink. "Yeah, it's time." I moved to the closet, reached past the everyday blazers and weekend sweaters, and found the dress I hadn't worn yet. Navy silk, sharp neckline, backless, nothing showy, just presence. The kind that walks into a room and silences it without saying a word. By the time the sun dipped behind the skyline, I was still standing there in front of the mirror, barefoot, hair pulled back, holding that envelope like a chess piece. I didn't feel rage. I didn't feel sadness. Just a click. That sound in your gut when you know exactly what they've done. They thought I'd show up and smile. Thought I'd nod politely and pretend everything was healed. But they forgot one thing. I didn't survive them. I outgrew them. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't even try. The dress hung back on its hanger, untouched. I'd laid the envelope down, but it kept pulling my eyes from across the room like a lit cigarette smoldering on a table. I wrapped myself in my robe, moved to my desk, and sat, barefoot, still in control, but with something old stirring inside me. Next to my keyboard sat a chipped blue mug, half full with cold coffee from hours earlier. Beside it, a flash drive with a cracked case, the one I'd carried through 3 apartments and 2 cross-country moves. Most people wouldn't notice it, wouldn't think anything of it. But to me, it was the only thing I'd managed to save from that year. The only proof that once, I built something that mattered. I plugged it in. The folder I hadn't touched in over a decade flickered to life. Before it all fell apart. Inside were lecture notes, datasets, draft models, and one presentation deck titled Nutritional Access Equity. I clicked it open and let the slides scroll on their own. Each chart, each bullet point, each line of logic was mine, and yet none of it carried my name anymore. It started in my second year at the University of Illinois. I was 19, bright, over-caffeinated, running on ambition and ramen noodles. That project, my project, was my heart. I'd spent 6 months developing a community-based nutrition framework using real-world surveys from low-income neighborhoods across Chicago. It was messy, idealistic, maybe even naive, but it was mine. One Friday, Delphine dropped by my dorm unannounced. She said she was checking in, but her tone was too sweet, too rehearsed. She brought takeout and a bottle of wine, sat on my bed like it belonged to her, and asked about my work. I was flattered. Delphine never asked me about anything before unless it involved cleaning up her mess. I showed her everything, my code maps, the logic trees, the way I modeled behavioral change through community kitchens. She leaned forward, smiling wide. "You really did all this?" she said. I thought she meant it. I thought for once she was proud of me. I couldn't have been more wrong. The following week, my files vanished from the shared campus server. I'd backed up most of them, but not the latest version. I remember staring at the blank screen, refreshing it over and over, as if it might magically reappear. Then the email came through the student network. "Congratulations to Delphine Shipman, recipient of the Women in Health Science Award." Attached was a photo of her standing beside the dean, holding a certificate with the title of my project printed in bold. I didn't cry. I just stood there frozen. At the Spring Scholarship Gala, Delphine gave a speech. She wore a soft lavender dress and spoke like she belonged in the world of microphones and applause. "This project was inspired by the invisible struggles in our own communities," she said. "We don't need to reinvent nutrition. We just need to make it reachable." My words, line for line. I sat 3 rows back with a plastic name tag that read, "Volunteer." Our parents stood near the front, clapping like they'd raised a savior. My mother leaned in toward me, voice clipped. "She just works harder than you, honey. Maybe take notes." I didn't respond. What was there to say? From that point on, I began to unravel quietly. A month later, a post appeared on the student blog, anonymous, titled "The Real Aileen Shipman." It painted me as manipulative, dishonest, a compulsive victim. Said I'd faked projects before, that I didn't belong in the program. There was no author, of course, but the tone, the phrases, the timing, I knew. Delphine didn't just take the spotlight, she burned down the stage behind her. After that, my email dried up. Classmates stopped replying to project threads. A professor pulled me aside and said gently, "You may be right, Aileen, but right doesn't always win. Perception does." I nearly dropped out that semester, but I didn't. I buried myself in work, rebuilt my model from scratch, took night shifts at the hospital cafeteria to pay tuition, alone, without applause, without credit. Now, 15 years later, that blog post is still up, still searchable, still poisoning the well. I took a screenshot, saved it under a new folder, receipts. Then I reopened my original research file and sat with it, not to grieve, not this time, but to remember what they built on top of me. Not just a lie, but a career, a reputation, a public image that never belonged to her. She didn't just plagiarize a project, she rewrote my role in the world. The glow of the screen still lingered on my retinas, even after I shut the laptop. I sat there, unmoving, until the shadows in the apartment had shifted from indigo to black, broken only by the blinking streetlight outside my window. A cool draft passed under the window frame, and suddenly I needed to move. I stood up slowly, crossing the room toward the filing cabinet shoved beneath my bookshelf. It had been years since I opened that bottom drawer, the one I once swore I'd never touch again. But pain has a way of loosening locks you thought you'd sealed shut. The key was still taped behind the bookshelf, right where I left it 6 apartments ago. My fingers found it blindly. The drawer creaked as it slid open. Files sat in messy stacks, covered in dust and time. I flipped past leases, medical receipts, expired tax documents, until I saw it. A plain white envelope, no return address, no letterhead, just my name typed in a font too formal, too calculated. I remembered the day it arrived, spring 2010. I was back home from school, waiting to hear from the estate attorney after my grandfather passed. Instead of condolences, I received paperwork. Inside the envelope was a copy of his revised will, dated just 2 months prior, and my name was gone. Cleanly, like it had never belonged there in the first place. Clipped to the back of the will was something worse, a DNA test. I hadn't touched it since. Now I unfolded it with a steadier hand than I expected. It read, "Maternal match inconclusive." The test listed Maureen Shipman as the alleged mother, my mother, except, according to this document, there wasn't enough genetic evidence to prove we were related. At 19, it wrecked me. I believed it. Why wouldn't I? It was printed. It had lab logos. It was official looking in the way lies sometimes are. But now I saw the holes immediately. The lab was called Pacific Diagnostics, a name I hadn't thought about in years. I pulled out my phone and ran a quick search. Closed in 2016, no corporate listing, no phone number. Nothing but a fraud scandal article buried on page 4 of the search results. "Shell Lab," I muttered and texted Ethan. "Need your help tracing an old clinic. Possible wire fraud." He replied within minutes. "You finally opened the drawer, didn't you? I'll start digging." By midnight, he sent me a link to archived financial records. There it was, plain as day. A $4,800 payment from Maureen Shipman to a numbered P.O. box registered under a Nevada address, 2 weeks before the DNA test was issued. So no, it wasn't just a cut from the will. It was a deletion. They didn't just disown me. They orchestrated my erasure. I sat down, knees pulled up to my chest, the DNA report resting in my lap. The rage didn't come yet. Just a cold, expanding clarity. It felt like staring at my reflection and realizing it wasn't a mirror at all, just another window they'd painted black from the other side. As I sat with that truth, I reopened my browser and returned to the student blog, the one that had never been taken down. I typed the title into the search bar. The Real Aileen, Liar, Thief, Victim. There it was, anonymous, sharp, full of bite without any proof. It didn't need proof. It just needed to sound believable. "You know how she is," one line read. "Always playing the wounded bird to get sympathy." A phrase Delphine used once in an interview, word for word. That passive-aggressive, Midwestern-taught poison. Polite on the surface, lethal underneath. Of course it was her. She couldn't confront me directly, so she killed my reputation in whispers. And people believed it. Because they wanted to. Because it was easier to doubt a woman without power than one with a press kit and a polished smile. As I compared the post's date with the one on the DNA file and the estate paperwork, something sickening clicked. All within the same 3-month window. The will, the blog, the test. It wasn't a coincidence. It was choreography. One aimed at making sure I wouldn't just be dismissed. I'd be discredited. Because what's easier than cutting someone out of your life? Making sure no one asks where they went. Now they want me back. To pose for photos. To smile in press releases. To be proof that time heals. But they didn't invite me because they missed me. They invited me because they need me to stay quiet. I traced the edge of the envelope, now creased and softened by time. Then I picked up my phone and began recording, my voice calm. "This is for record, 2010, altered will, same quarter, falsified DNA, anonymous blog post, linguistic match to Delphine, conclusion, pattern confirmed, erasure was intentional." I paused, then added one more line. "This time I'll be the one writing the narrative." I didn't tell Ethan where I was going. He'd ask questions I didn't want to answer yet, not until I was sure. I just said, "It's something I need to do alone," and booked a one-way to Chicago. It was still dark when I left San Francisco. By the time the plane touched down in Illinois, the sky was streaked with pale sunlight, barely warming the sidewalks downtown. The city hadn't changed much. It still smelled like early morning exhaust and damp stone after a late summer rain. Familiar, but no longer mine. I didn't go home. I didn't even look toward the old neighborhood. Instead, I took a rideshare straight to a modest corner office in the West Loop. I'd called ahead, booked a generic document consultation under my maiden name. I didn't want to give anyone a reason to cancel. When I stepped into the lobby, the woman behind the desk barely looked up. "Mr. Penn will be with you shortly," she said. Penn. His full name was Julian Penn. Back then, he was a junior associate, green, bookish, uncomfortable in expensive shoes. I remembered him because he was the only person in that stuffy estate meeting who looked at me like I was human. 10 minutes later, he opened the door himself. He paused when he saw me. No handshake, no smile, just a quiet, resigned exhale. "Aileen," he said softly, "it's been a long time." We sat in a tiny conference room with a window that faced a brick wall. He didn't ask why I was there. Maybe he already knew. I slid 2 documents across the table, the revised will and the DNA test, both printed cleanly, both dated and notarized. I waited. He didn't touch them. "You knew," I said. "Didn't you?" His jaw tightened. He stared down at his hands, thumbs pressed together like a man bracing for confession. "I was 26, just got promoted to junior partner. That file? It didn't feel right. I flagged it. I asked questions." I leaned in, voice calm. "And then?" "They told me it was a family matter. Said I was overstepping. 2 days later, I was pulled off the case." "You were my last legal defense," I said, my voice now razor thin. "And they bought your silence for the price of a title." He flinched, but didn't argue. I watched him sit with the guilt, let it steep. I wasn't here to punish him, not really, but he needed to feel what I'd felt all these years, overlooked, overruled, erased. "I had no power then," he finally said. "But you do now," I replied. Silence filled the room like fog until he reached for the papers at last. He scanned the signatures, the dates, the lab name. "This wasn't even a real clinic," he muttered. "No, it was a front, and Maureen paid them." He closed the folder and set it down. "Why now?" "Because they invited me back," I said flatly, "and they expect a smile, not a reckoning." Julian hesitated. "What do you want from me?" I didn't smile. I didn't blink. "You helped erase me," I said. "Now you're going to help unerase me." A long breath passed between us. Finally, he nodded. "Send me everything you have. I'll start building the file." I stood to leave. "And don't warn them," I added. "You owe me that much." "I won't," he said. "But Aileen, this won't be easy." I didn't look back. It never was. By the time I boarded the return flight, the clouds had thickened over O'Hare. The turbulence matched the slow storm inside me, but I wasn't rattled. Not anymore. For the first time in years, I wasn't angry. I was aligned. The betrayal still pulsed under my skin, but it no longer controlled me. I had the truth now, and a witness. That changed everything. I watched the skyline fade behind the plane window. The city that broke me was shrinking beneath the clouds. They tried to silence the story. But now, I had someone ready to listen. I came to find a witness. I left with an accomplice, and that changes everything. The wheels touched down in San Francisco just before 7 p.m. The sun was setting, painting the glass towers in warm gold, while the rest of the city cooled into gray. I didn't waste time. I bypassed the carousel, took a rideshare straight home, and barely greeted the doorman. He looked up from his crossword to wave, then blinked when he realized it was me. Back in my apartment, I didn't take off my shoes. I walked straight to the hall closet, crouched behind the coats, and pulled out a lockbox the size of a bread loaf. Its metal was scratched, the handle was loose, but the key, Ethan taped it under the windowsill years ago, still fit. The lid creaked open. Inside, between old tax folders and faded birth certificates, was the file I hoped I'd never need again. 2 wills. One dated spring 2009, one dated fall 2010. I laid them side by side on my desk. The 2009 version had my name on it, clearly, boldly. My grandfather's final words in black and white. Aileen shall retain partial interest in the Shipman farmland and related assets. Irrevocable. The second will didn't mention me at all. Same paper, same font, almost. But if you looked closely, the margins didn't line up. The signature page, slightly crooked, as if copied and pasted. The notary seal was blurred, and the scanned initials on page 7 looked more like someone traced them by hand than signed them under pressure. Before Chicago, I would have doubted myself. But now, with J. Penn's quiet admission echoing in my ears, I didn't flinch. This wasn't just a mistake, it was a fabrication. I stared at the line that used to bear my name. Then I heard his voice again, my grandfather, sitting on the porch with a wool blanket across his knees, handing me a lemonade I didn't want. This land'll always be part yours, no matter what your mother thinks. Now Delphine's name was listed as sole heir. They didn't just erase me, they handed her everything, then smiled like it was fair. I scanned both wills, named the files clearly, then crafted an email. Subject: Estate revision attachments. To message: undo it quietly, or I will do it publicly. You have 48 hours. Aileen. I didn't send it from my main account. I used a clean alias and encrypted the files. I'd learned that much from years of watching legal chaos unfold behind press headlines. You never swing unless your footing is solid. The reply came faster than I expected, under 2 hours, from Delphine. Hey, wow, a bit dramatic, don't you think? Let's talk before this gets messy. No need to involve strangers in family matters. I'm free Friday. No apology, no denial, just fake sugar over a blade. I didn't reply. Maureen, of course, said nothing, not a word. Not even a bounced-back error message. Her silence was an answer. They didn't think I had the courage or the proof or the spine, and that's where they always got it wrong. I stood by the window, watching traffic pulse below, then turned back to my desk. The time for quiet was over. I created a new folder labeled Phase 1, inside, the wills, the DNA test, the blog screenshot, notes from Penn, the money trail from Ethan's research. I exported everything to a password-protected drive, then attached a compressed version to an email for Noelle Weaver, the only journalist I trusted with this kind of poison. I didn't hit send. Not yet. But my finger hovered over the key. Let them wonder how loud I'm willing to get. They spent years perfecting their version of me. Docile, forgettable, erased. But I've kept every receipt, every bruise, every scar. They buried my name in ink and inheritance. But I learned to read between the lines. And now I write the next one. The next morning, I didn't start with coffee. I didn't even glance at the kettle. I sat down at the kitchen table surrounded by old records, paper and digital, printouts, USB drives, a half-dozen open folders, receipts folded so many times the ink was starting to fade. I had everything spread out like puzzle pieces, not yet assembled but already telling a story I couldn't unsee. Ethan walked in just as I was organizing a pile of tax returns. He still had that just-showered look, damp curls pushed back, hoodie clinging to his shoulders, but there was nothing relaxed about his face. He wasn't even pretending to play it cool. You need to see this, he said. He slid his tablet across the table like it was carrying bad news. No preamble, no easing into it. Just handed over the storm and let me stand in the rain. I turned the screen toward me and forgot how to blink. At first, I couldn't process what I was looking at. It was a document, several actually. A spreadsheet linked to a set of IRS filings tagged to my Social Security number. Income reports, consulting contracts, donations, medical equipment purchases, travel expenses, refunds, line after line, year after year. Some of it dated back almost a decade. I narrowed my eyes, heart beginning to pound against my ribs like it was trying to punch its way out. These are mine? I asked. But the question barely came out. I already knew the answer. Ethan nodded. Yours. At least that's how it's been filed. I scrolled slowly, teeth clenched. Most of those years I'd been sleeping in other people's guest rooms, working side gigs to scrape by, teaching part-time, living off bulk rice and borrowed Wi-Fi. I'd never even broken 40 grand a year, and yet, according to these records, I was somehow the beneficiary of consulting payments from institutions I'd never even spoken to. Tens of thousands here, tax write-offs there, enough income to qualify for massive deductions, enough to raise red flags, if anyone had actually been looking. I kept scrolling, jaw tight. Then I saw it. More family foundation. My stomach turned. They used your identity, Ethan said quietly. Probably as a shell, or maybe a shield. Their donations? Routed through your name. A few press pieces even mention you, carefully, subtly. Like a myth they were keeping alive just enough to sound noble. He tapped into another document, this time a glossy internal PDF labeled Community Partnership Programs, Annual Report, page 3, inspired by Aileen Shipman's vision for equitable health access. I laughed, a small broken sound. It didn't even feel like it came from me. That's rich, I said, staring at the words like they were a bad tattoo on the world's most dishonest body. They didn't just erase me, I said after a long beat. They recycled me. Ethan's voice was low. They built a whole public image around it, around you. Quietly enough not to owe you anything. Loudly enough to make people believe the origin story. I pushed my chair back, harder than I meant to. The legs screeched against the tile. This wasn't just a case of stolen work. This was full-on identity laundering. Delphine hadn't just hijacked my proposal back then. She'd turned it into the cornerstone of the Moore brand. And somehow, despite being scrubbed from the credits, I'd been kept in the picture, just enough to be useful. I pulled up the Moore Foundation website, and there it was, front page, a slideshow of curated images. Delphine reading to children in a library. Delphine in a lab coat talking to doctors. Delphine handing a novelty check to a smiling hospital administrator. Beneath it all, a clean minimalist caption, rooted in Aileen Shipman's passion for change. Click. I went to the About Us tab, and there it was again. Another lie. A fabricated quote slapped under a sepia-toned photo of a stethoscope. Health should be a right, not a privilege. Aileen S. They gave me a damn tagline. They turned me into a mission statement. I let the mouse fall from my hand and stared at the screen, every nerve buzzing like I'd touched a live wire. It's not just fraud anymore, I said. It's branding. They turned me into a damn logo. Ethan didn't say anything. He didn't need to. The silence in the room was thick enough to be its own witness. I opened a new folder on my desktop and titled it Truth Packet. Into it, I dragged every file I had. IRS records with my SSN and fabricated income screenshots of the Moore Foundation's website, front page and about section. My original research proposal, timestamped, backed up and notarized from years ago. The two conflicting wills. The DNA report that shattered their narrative. The blog post that tried to discredit me. J. Penn's notes and emails. He'd been digging too. Once everything was inside, I copied it all to an external drive. Then uploaded it to 3 separate cloud accounts under different aliases, passwords that even I had to write down. I wasn't going to lose the truth again. Then I opened my email. To Noel Byrne. Subject, the family story you didn't know. Attachments, evidence, confidential. Body, this isn't about revenge, it's about correction. You asked me once if I'd ever go on the record. This is me going on the record. I hit send before I could think twice. Ethan walked over and rested his hands gently on my shoulders. You okay? I didn't pretend. No. He didn't push, but I was calm, more than calm. I felt clear, like some old fog had finally lifted, and I could see everything for what it really was. I'm not trying to ruin them, I said. I'm just going to make sure they can't keep lying. Because that's what they'd done, rewritten history in real time, buried the facts, polished the lie. Left just enough of me in the narrative to keep their story airtight, but now I had every piece of the truth, and they'd used my name to cover their empire. Now I'd use it to take the mask off, and this time, they wouldn't get to write the ending. Seattle was gray when I landed. Typical, but it felt different this time, like the city had been holding its breath for years, waiting for me to return not as a guest, but as a disruption. I didn't check in with anyone. No texts, no announcements, no social media post. Just me and the quiet thunder rolling under my ribs. The wedding was still 3 days away, but the war had already started, and the first blow came faster than expected. I was reviewing financial statements in my hotel room when my inbox pinged. Subject line, Urgent Mental Health Record Notification. I frowned, opened it. Inside was an email from a hospital admin I didn't know, flagged confidential. Someone had submitted a request to access mental health history related to Aileen Shipman, citing public concern for recent erratic behavior and past incidents involving manic episodes. Attached was a PDF of a psychological assessment, dated 2009, signed by a psychiatrist who, upon quick search, had lost their license in 2015. I stared at the line under diagnosis. Possible bipolar 2. Follow-up recommended. My hand didn't shake. Instead, I laughed once. Low and bitter. Of course they'd try this. I picked up my phone and called Ethan. They're going for mental health smears now, I said. It's classic. Quiet, legalish, and absolutely them. Maureen? He asked. Too strategic. Delphine. He didn't argue. The evaluation was fake, sloppy, but dangerous enough to seed doubt, the kind of thing no one questions out loud but whispers behind closed doors. I called my attorney, flagged it to the Bar Association, and sent it to Noelle with the note, "They're panicking." Then I turned off my laptop, because another email had just arrived. Anonymous sender. Subject, "She wasn't supposed to be there." No body text, just an attachment. I opened it. It was a redacted hospital report from a children's clinic in Seattle, 2013. A 7-year-old boy admitted with mild asthma, misdiagnosed, given adult-grade medication, induced coma, treated and stabilized 2 weeks later. No charges. Case closed quietly. The attending physician, Dr. Delphine Gaskins. There was a second page, handwritten. I was the nurse on call. I knew the chart was wrong. I tried to speak up. They shut me down. But you can speak now. I sat still for a full minute, not out of shock, out of focus. I'd fought this entire time thinking I was up against a personal grudge, jealousy, erasure, inheritance. But this was malpractice. This was buried harm. And suddenly the stakes weren't just mine anymore. I forwarded the file to Penn, to Noelle, and to a private legal investigator I'd used once during a past acquisition battle. Make sure this can't be deleted, I wrote. Trace everyone who touched this file, quietly, fast. An hour later, I was on the phone with the Washington Medical Board, filing a formal complaint. Do you have cause to believe the report is valid? The woman asked. I didn't hesitate. I have reason to believe the report is true. The silence was purchased, and more people got hurt than we know. Then I sent one more email. To Delphine. No subject, no greeting. Just 3 words. I have it. She read it within 5 minutes. Didn't respond. Of course she didn't. That night, Ethan and I sat side by side in the hotel room, the only light coming from the soft glow of our screens. You're calm, he said. I looked over at him. I'm not calm, I said. I'm committed. And that's worse. For them. Because I wasn't just defending myself anymore. I was defending the truth. For every person they buried with their image, every voice they silenced with reputation, every line they rewrote with bloodless precision, they tried to erase me, then they tried to discredit me. Now they'll have to face me. The ride to the Grand Solace felt like approaching the eye of a storm, not with fear, but with finality. I didn't feel nervous. There were no butterflies, no cold sweat, no urge to turn back. Just that strange calm that settles over you after the worst has already happened. When the fire's done burning and all that's left is what you decide to build or destroy in the aftermath. I stepped out of the car into a sunlit afternoon that felt like it belonged to someone else. The Grand Solace towered above me, gleaming like a false god. All polished glass and curated perfection, its front steps lined with white roses curling up gold-plated railings. The sound of a string quartet drifted from somewhere inside, violins tuned to the frequency of wealth. Inside, it smelled like champagne and control. Everything was immaculate. The marble floors, the uniformed staff, the strategically placed mirrors catching light just right. It was a place built to impress, to perform, but not for me. I didn't walk in like a guest. I entered like a fact. Every head in the lobby turned when they saw me. There was a moment, brief, breathless, where no one spoke. Just eyes locking onto the daughter who wasn't supposed to be here. The one they'd written off. The one they'd erased. I wore navy silk, clean lines, no jewelry. My hair pulled back, my expression sharp. The ballroom doors opened ahead of me. I didn't hesitate. As I stepped through, the room stilled, glasses hovering midair, conversations dying mid-sentence, the kind of quiet that only happens when the room collectively realizes it just became a crime scene, and the detective is holding the microphone. Delphine was near the center of it all, surrounded by donors, board members, family friends. Her expression faltered for the first time I could remember. Not panic, not fear, just a visible fracture in the porcelain she wore like armor. Maureen blinked once, composed herself like a machine resetting. Kenneth looked like he'd seen a ghost. And maybe he had. I didn't give them time to regroup. I walked past champagne flutes and stunned whispers, all the way to the front. My heels struck the marble with every step, louder than the music still playing in the background. There was a podium, a microphone already waiting. I took it. "You invited me here," I said, voice even, "but I brought something with me, something none of you expected. The part of the story that's never been told, at least not out loud." The projector screen behind me flickered on. Footage began to play. It was Delphine on a TEDx stage. Spotlights, applause, her voice polished and confident. She spoke about health equity, about systemic injustice, about data-backed change. But the words weren't hers. The research wasn't hers. The entire presentation, charts, models, even the mission statement, had been lifted, line by line, from my original files. From a proposal I wrote in a basement library with blistered hands and no grant funding. The timestamps played in the corner of the video. My name, Aileen Shipman, appeared on the original PDF cited in her presentation. The data, unmistakably from my undergrad thesis, scrolled on the screen. I let the silence settle. Then I spoke. "She didn't win that scholarship," I said quietly. "She didn't earn that applause. She borrowed my work, removed my name, and submitted it as her own." The room was hushed. Even the servers had stopped moving. The second clip began. No video this time, just audio. Maureen's voice, clear, cold, unfiltered, filled the ballroom. "Aileen's a parasite. She drains everything around her. She doesn't deserve to carry our name." The sound system didn't soften it. If anything, it sharpened every syllable. Gasps rippled across the room. Some guests looked down. Others looked directly at me. Donors and trustees stiffened, trying to parse what this meant. The story they'd believed was unraveling in real time. I scanned the crowd. Faces turned hard, pale, suspicious. Gregory stood near the back, hands clenched at his sides. He looked down at the floor, like he couldn't bear to watch, but couldn't walk away either. Delphine stepped forward, her voice uncertain. "Aileen, this isn't the place. This isn't the time," I cut in. "You've had 15 years. Kenneth shifted beside her. He looked at her like he was seeing her for the first time, like the room had relit her from a new angle. "You used me," he murmured. "You used all of us." Maureen started toward the stage, her expression unreadable. Calm, but something coiled beneath it. I lifted a folder into view. "This contains documentation of financial misconduct connected to the Moore Foundation," I said clearly. "Falsified IRS activity, identity theft, and a suppressed malpractice case from 2014 that Delphine buried with legal threats." She stopped mid-step. I didn't flinch. "I'm not here to fight," I said. "I'm not here to yell or beg or bargain. I'm here to document." Delphine's voice cracked. "You don't understand. It's exactly what everyone thinks it is," I said, louder now. "Maybe worse." The final slide blinked off. The screen went black. The silence didn't. The illusion had cracked open, and what spilled out wasn't just the truth, but the rot that had been hiding behind wealth and polish. For years, they told the story without me. They scrubbed my name, my work, my voice. So I rewrote the scene. They built a stage. I stood on it. They chose the audience. I chose the moment. They used my name to build an empire of lies, and now I used it, loud, clear, and unapologetic, to burn it all down. The ballroom cleared like air after a storm. No shouting, no scenes, just silence, the kind that follows truth when it finally outruns denial. I stood still as chairs scraped, murmurs swelled, and polished shoes disappeared across the marble. Some couldn't look at me. Some looked too long. But I didn't move. I didn't need to. They'd already heard me. 3 days later, Delphine's medical license was under review. The board posted a quiet, non-committal notice on their website. The Moore Foundation froze all public-facing activity, pending compliance audit. Kenneth released a single statement. "I was unaware of the extent of the misrepresentations. I've withdrawn from all family-related ventures. And Maureen? She locked herself inside the Mercer estate and declined all calls. No interviews, no public rebuttal. Because there was nothing left to spin. The cracks had run too deep. Their version of reality had collapsed in on itself. Not because I forced it, but because it was never built to hold. Weeks passed. Back in San Francisco, the fog rolled in early one Tuesday. I was on the balcony, laptop closed, mug lukewarm, sun almost gone. I played the voicemail again. "You humiliated us. You'll regret this." Her voice was flat, practiced. But I didn't regret anything, because I hadn't humiliated them. They had built a house of glass and handed me a hammer. All I did was stop protecting it. No one sued me. No one apologized either. And I didn't need either one. There was nothing theatrical about what followed. No press tours, no bestseller memoir. Just space, breath, the luxury of not having to flinch. My team at the startup stood by me. Our latest pilot program got picked up for city implementation. Not because of scandal, because the work spoke for itself. One night, Miriam stopped by with a bouquet of sunflowers and a half smile. "You're still here," she said, pressing the stems into my arms. "I am," I answered. "Still here, and still me." Ethan grilled dinner on the rooftop. We talked about nothing, about everything, about maybe getting out of town for a bit. Just us. I slept better, laughed louder, stopped bracing for the next hit. I never responded to Maureen's voicemail. Never answered Delphine's PR rep. Let them spin in silence. They never said sorry. But I didn't need them to. What I needed, and finally had, was mine again. My voice, my work, my life, forgiveness, maybe someday. But this was about freedom, and I chose it. Maybe justice isn't always about punishment. Maybe it's just about not disappearing. Being seen, finally and fully, on your own terms. I didn't share this story for sympathy. I shared it because for too long I believed silence was strength, that if I just worked harder, stayed quiet, stayed small, things would fix themselves. But the truth is, silence only protects the people who hurt you. Speaking up doesn't always change the past, but it reclaims your future. If you've ever felt like your voice didn't matter, that your truth was inconvenient or unwanted, I'm here to tell you, you are not alone. And you are not crazy for remembering what they hoped you'd forget. Some of us don't get apologies. Some of us don't get justice in a courtroom. But all of us deserve freedom, the kind you earn by refusing to disappear. So maybe ask yourself, what have you been quiet about for too long? Who told you that your truth wasn't worth hearing? Let's talk about it. If this story touched something in you, drop a 1 in the comments, or tell me what state you're watching from. If it didn't resonate, I'd still love to hear why. And where you're tuning in from. And hey, if you believe stories like this matter, subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next one. Real voices, real lives, real healing. Thanks for listening. And remember, your voice isn't too loud. They just weren't ready to hear it.
A daughter-in-law is like an ATM. If you disagree, divorce awaits, my mother-in-law cheerfully said on the phone. She has always found joy in being mean to me, making my life difficult, especially since my father-in-law passed away. I thought maybe she was lonely, so I put up with it, but I had reached my limit. On top of that, my mother-in-law had a huge misunderstanding, something that was a big deal. I took a deep breath and told her the truth. Right after, I heard her scream from the other side of the phone. My name is Angela Merkel, and I'm a 50-year-old housewife juggling part-time work and household chores. My friends say I'm someone who doesn't get upset easily and is mentally strong. I met my husband Peter after I started working. We were the same age and hit it off right away at a mixer a friend invited me to. I wasn't really interested in dating at the time, and the mixer felt more like my friend was using me to meet men for herself. I didn't want to stand out, so I sat quietly in a corner, eating and drinking alone. Then I noticed someone at another table also keeping a low profile. Our eyes met, and we started talking naturally. That person was Peter, the man I would later marry. We both clearly weren't enjoying the mixer, and Peter commented with a wry smile, "It's tough, isn't it?" His smile was so sweet and hard to describe. After the mixer, we exchanged contact information. At first, we were just good friends, but when Peter confessed his feelings, we started dating. At 35, I married Peter, and 4 years later, our son Larry was born. We've been happy ever since. Peter's parents live far away, hours away by train. When we got married, I actually felt relieved by the distance. That's because every time my mother-in-law saw me, she would say hurtful things like, "Did you really marry such an unfeminine woman, Peter? Someone cuter would suit you better." The first time we met, I thought she was just checking me out, but then she suddenly said that. I was so shocked that I froze. It was the first time someone had spoken to me so rudely right after meeting them, and I didn't know how to respond. Since I didn't react, my mother-in-law took it as a chance to criticize me even more. She said, "I expected a nice gift from someone from the city, but what's this plain baked goods? You have no taste." The gift I brought was a popular assortment from a famous store. It looked simple, but it tasted amazing, and I thought Peter's parents would enjoy it. Unfortunately, my intentions didn't come across at all. The first family meeting was filled with my mother-in-law's criticism. During the whole thing, my father-in-law said nothing, pretending everything was fine, and Peter just gave a nervous smile, not stepping in. I told myself, well, we don't live near each other and we won't meet often, and moved forward with the wedding preparations. I didn't exchange contact info with my mother-in-law, and living in the city, I figured I could avoid dealing with her. After I married Peter, we barely interacted with my mother-in-law, and we lived peacefully. Later, I became pregnant with our son, Larry, and gave birth without any issues. After he was born, my mother-in-law made a fuss about wanting to see her grandson, but Peter handled it well. I was so grateful to be married to him. I knew many husbands sided with their mothers and ignored their wives and kids, but Peter wasn't like that. Our peaceful life continued after Larry was born. He's grown a lot and is now 16, in his 3rd year of middle school. Larry is thinking seriously about his future and aiming for one of the best high schools in the city. He's going through a rebellious phase now, and when I gently point something out, he just says, "Ugh, so annoying." But I can tell he struggles with showing his true feelings, because after acting out, he sometimes apologizes in a very quiet voice. Understanding his struggle, I try not to overreact and just quietly support him through this phase. My main concern these days is his cute, rebellious behavior. Other than that, life is pretty smooth. Work is going well, and I'm actually earning more than Peter now. He's been really busy with his job and often comes home late, but it's not a big issue. We were living peacefully, and then out of nowhere, something happened. It's serious. Dad collapsed. My mother-in-law called with urgent news while we were relaxing as a family of 4 on a weekend. Peter usually spends his days off alone, but this time, we were all together when we got the call. We talked about what to do. "We need to get there quickly," I said. "Yes, let's get ready. Larry, pack for 5 days." "Got it," Larry replied. In this situation, he followed my instructions without question. We quickly packed and left the house, rushing to catch the train. Unfortunately, on the way to the hospital, as directed by my mother-in-law, we got the sad news that my father-in-law had already passed away. "Dad, why?" Peter said. I wasn't very close to my father-in-law and had barely spoken to him, but seeing Peter's sadness made me feel sad too. My mother-in-law was crying loudly, and for once, she didn't say anything harsh to me. After the busy funeral, we returned home a few days later. As I was preparing dinner, Peter made a surprising suggestion. "I want Mom to live with us," he said seriously. "What did you say?" I asked, shocked. "Mom has been really down since Dad passed away, and I'm worried about her," Peter explained. "She's getting older, and we can't leave her alone." I understood his concern, but I couldn't help feeling anxious. My mother-in-law had always been rude to me, and the thought of living with her made me worry about how it might change our peaceful life. Peter didn't like that I didn't agree right away. He looked a bit angry and said, "This is my house, and I decide who lives here." I was surprised by how strong he felt. Peter is usually gentle and often goes along with my decisions, not because I push him, but because he struggles to make decisions on his own. Over time, We developed this natural balance between us. After snapping at me, Peter angrily went to his room. I realized that if Peter had made up his mind, I should support him. I had no intention of being unkind to someone who was feeling lonely. I thought we should try to make my mother-in-law feel welcome since she must be struggling with grief. But when she arrived at the house, her attitude surprised me. "Oh, take my luggage to my room," she said right away. "And for tonight's dinner, let's have steak to celebrate me moving in. Make sure to get a nice steak, okay?" she ordered. She didn't stop there. "Larry, don't just sit there. Bring Grandma's luggage. You're the youngest, so you need to work hard for me." Even though she doted on Larry, my mother-in-law thought she was the most important person in the family and naturally started bossing everyone around. Larry, with a troubled look, did what his grandmother asked because he knew arguing would only make things worse. "Come on, move. Stop zoning out," she ordered, and we all had to hurry under her commands. After my father-in-law passed away, instead of feeling lonely, my mother-in-law started living more freely in our house. It would have been one thing if we just had to deal with her demands, but after she moved in, she began picking on me harshly. "What is this? This side dish is too salty. Are you trying to send me to the hospital with high blood pressure?" Complaining about my cooking became an everyday thing. She would complain at every meal, even though I used normal seasonings and Peter and Larry preferred food with lighter flavors. It was clear she was just trying to irritate me. On top of that, she constantly criticized my laundry, cleaning, and all the household chores. One day, I couldn't take it anymore. I handed her the vacuum cleaner and said, "If you think I'm doing it wrong, please show me how it's done." She took the vacuum and cleaned, but her skills were pretty average, nothing different from mine. Still, she confidently declared, "This is how cleaning should be done." I couldn't understand how she was so sure of herself. One day, I finished work early and came home. When I arrived, my mother-in-law was chatting with a woman I didn't know. "This is Anna Smith, a good friend I've made since moving here. We get along very well," she said. Mrs. Smith greeted me briefly and then continued talking with my mother-in-law. "A daughter-in-law needs proper training. Emma is too soft," my mother-in-law said. "No, I don't think that's true," Mrs. Smith replied. It seemed Mrs. Smith was a good listener for my mother-in-law. I pretended not to hear them and went to the kitchen to start dinner. Every now and then, they glanced at me with unpleasant smiles. The atmosphere was tense. Suddenly, there was a loud noise. "Oh, sorry about that," said Mrs. Smith, as her coffee cup fell to the floor. Thankfully, it didn't break, but the coffee spilled everywhere. As I started wiping up the coffee, something fell on my head. "What are you doing?" I exclaimed. "Oops, my hand slipped," my mother-in-law said. What had landed on me was her coffee, and both women burst out laughing as if nothing serious had happened. "I'm home. What's going on?" "It's a bit noisy," Larry said as he came home from school. He took one look and quickly understood what was happening. "What are you two doing?" he shouted angrily at my mother-in-law and Mrs. Smith. He pulled a towel from his bag and gently wiped my head. Even though Larry usually acts rebellious and distant, the way he helped me showed how kind he really is. After wiping up the mess, Larry gave a sharp glare at both of them. "What are you doing to my mom?" he demanded. "Larry, dear, you're misunderstanding. It was just an accident," my mother-in-law replied. "Shut up. Do you think I don't know what you usually do to her? Instead of bullying her, why don't you spend your time doing something useful?" Larry's firm words left them both speechless. "Who do you think you are?" Larry continued. "Anyone who treats my mom like that isn't a guest. Get out now." Under Larry's strong presence, Mrs. Smith quickly left the house and my mother-in-law, unable to argue, retreated to her room, clearly upset. "Thank you, Larry," I said. "It's not just for you, Mom. I just wanted to get rid of the troublemakers so I can study in peace," he replied shyly. Watching him, I felt truly lucky to have him. But the trouble didn't end there. When Peter came home, it seemed my mother-in-law had already told him her version of the story. "Why did you treat Grandma and her friend like that?" Peter shouted at Larry. Larry's face fell, and my mother-in-law watched with a smug smile. "Peter, you've got it wrong. Larry was just trying to protect me," I tried to explain. "Protect you?" Mom says Larry barged into the living room, made a scene, and kicked them out. I thought it was a joke. My mother-in-law had twisted the facts to make herself look innocent, and Peter believed her. I tried hard to explain what really happened, but Peter wouldn't listen. First of all, you and Larry are too cold to my mom. She's my mother, and you need to respect her more. Peter lectured us without giving us a chance to speak. I understood that Peter wanted to care for his mother, but it was hard to make him see the truth. He wasn't taking our side seriously and believed whatever his mother told him, especially since we had been living apart from her for so long. I hadn't realized how much of a mama's boy Peter was, but it became clear over time. Things had really turned into a mess. I found myself sighing more than ever these days. After the incident with Larry, my mother-in-law got even more confident, twisting the facts and reporting them to Peter whenever we disagreed with her. This made everything difficult, and even 4 months later, Larry and I were avoiding contact with her, just trying to live peacefully. One day, while I was sorting through receipts in my wallet, I noticed one of my credit cards, a black card, was missing. Did I lose it somewhere? I wondered. As I was thinking about it, my phone rang. It was my mother-in-law. I sighed, showing my true feelings, tempted to ignore it. But knowing it might cause more problems later, I reluctantly answered. "Hello," I said.
Hi, Angela.
"Guess where I am?" she asked in a playful tone. "I don't know," I replied, not very interested. She wasn't discouraged by my lack of interest and cheerfully continued, "I'm at a travel agency. I'm planning a trip to Paris with 22 of my relatives." "That sounds fun," I said vaguely, not really caring. Then she dropped a huge surprise. "Oh, by the way, you're paying for this trip. I borrowed your black card from your wallet and memorized the PIN, so I'll be using it." "What?" I was shocked. She laughed loudly and said, "A daughter-in-law is just like an ATM. If she objects, divorce is waiting." I could hear her relatives laughing in the background, making comments like, "Go easy on her," and "You're going to make her cry." But at that moment, I wasn't upset by her words anymore. I had bigger things to deal with. "By the way, I've already canceled that card. And Peter and I have been divorced for 3 months." Silence followed. "What?" my mother-in-law finally said, clearly confused. She didn't understand what was happening at all. I realized I'd need to explain everything, but it was clear she had no clue about the situation. I decided it was time to explain everything from the start, knowing the conversation ahead wouldn't be easy. There had been warning signs even before my mother-in-law moved in with us. One sign was Peter coming home later and going out more on holidays. He wasn't doing well at his job, and his income had stayed the same for years, which made our financial situation harder. That's why I started working more to support our household. Peter didn't seem worried about his low salary at all. He thought we were doing fine and didn't need to work harder, but the truth was, we were only managing because of my efforts. Even though Peter wasn't making much money, he was family-oriented and helped around the house, so I wasn't too unhappy with our life. But as time went on, Peter came home late more often. He said it was because of unpaid overtime, claiming it was good to owe people favors, which might help him get a raise or promotion. This was strange, because Peter had never cared about his career before. As he worked more overtime, he also started going out alone on holidays. One day, I suggested we do something as a family. "Lately, you've been going out alone a lot. How about we go somewhere together next week?" I asked. But he quickly said no. "Actually, I bumped into an old classmate recently. We've made plans to meet next week." "Don't worry, it's a guy," he added, even though I hadn't asked. His explanation felt off, and I sensed something was wrong. I decided to quietly look into Peter's activities, and I soon found proof of his infidelity. The meeting he mentioned was with a classmate, but it wasn't a man, it was a woman. I couldn't believe how much evidence I found. Maybe I had been too busy working to notice what was happening. When I realized Peter was cheating, I didn't feel shocked. I had loved him and thought marrying him was the right decision, but the moment I learned he had betrayed Larry and me, all my feelings for him disappeared. Right after his affair came to light, Peter had his mother move in, as if he was trying to force a new living arrangement on us. My affection for him completely turned into negative feelings. Had he shown true remorse, things might have been different. I was ready to forgive him. I gathered all the evidence I had and waited for a moment when we could talk alone. "You've been having an affair, haven't you?"
I said.
Peter was shocked when he saw the pile of proof in front of him. He tried to argue, saying, "It's not my fault. You were always busy with work and ignored me. You're to blame for the affair, too." Instead of apologizing, Peter blamed me, trying to justify his actions. "I didn't want to have an affair, but you didn't show me enough affection. You took me for granted, and that's why it happened," he said, slamming his hand on the desk, as if acting tough would make me back down. His excuses were hard to accept. "Is that all you have to say?" I asked, calmly sliding the already filled-out divorce papers toward him. His face turned pale. "What? This is a joke, right?" he asked. "No, this is not a joke. Divorce is not too extreme. It's what happens when someone cheats," I said coldly. Peter desperately tried to explain himself, but I just gave him a cold stare. "You call it just an affair, but do you really think betraying me and Larry can be dismissed so easily? You don't seem to understand how serious this is. Cheating on your family is a real reason for divorce, as the law says." Hearing the word law, Peter went silent. I kept going. "You said you cheated because I was busy working, but the truth is, I had to work because you couldn't earn enough. Blaming me for your own failure is shameless." Peter's eyes filled with tears as I continued. He wasn't strong-willed, and trying to win an argument without admitting his mistakes wasn't working. "I don't want a divorce. I can't handle it," he sobbed. But tears don't fix things, especially for adults. If he didn't want a divorce, he shouldn't have cheated. "If you say you don't want a divorce, I'll get a lawyer and start the process right away. I'll do whatever it takes to end this marriage." My decision to divorce Peter wasn't just because of his affair, it was also because I needed to get away from his mother. I knew I couldn't live with her anymore. I was determined to go through with the divorce and stayed firm on my decision. Eventually, Peter agreed and signed the divorce papers. Seeing his signature, I sighed in relief. "Please wait before telling Mom. I'll tell her myself. She might be shocked and upset," Peter said. I was surprised by his request, but I agreed.
"All right."
"In the meantime, I'll start preparing to move out. I'll also have custody of Larry. With your income, it would be hard for you to support both him and your mom," I added. Peter nodded quietly. We filed the divorce papers quickly, but we would deal with dividing assets and child support later. I explained to my mother-in-law, "Peter hasn't told you yet, but I've been living here just to get ready to move out. I've found a new place, and I'll be moving next week." On the other end of the phone, my mother-in-law stayed silent, likely shocked by what I had said. "If you have nothing to say, I'm going to hang up," I told her. At this, she finally reacted, exclaiming, "How could you do this? Why would you divorce without my consent?" I calmly responded, "There's no need for family consent to get a divorce. That's not a rule." She groaned in frustration. Then, I heard a woman's voice, probably from the travel agency, saying, "I'm sorry, but this credit card cannot be used. The charge is $350,000. How would you like to proceed?" I couldn't believe it. My mother-in-law had tried to charge $350,000 to my black card without my permission. Even though I was the breadwinner and owned a black card, I never thought she would attempt such a large transaction without asking. As I stood there in shock, my mother-in-law asked, panicking, "Why did you cancel the black card?"
"Why?"
"Because you snooped on my PIN," I said. "You thought I didn't notice, but I saw you peek at it without permission." There had been a moment when we dined out with my mother-in-law and some others. I didn't have cash, so I used my black card. When I pulled it from my wallet, I noticed her eyes light up, and she kept watching the card closely. I realized then that she had an obsession with money, but I never imagined she would try to use my black card or sneak behind me to steal my PIN. I could even hear her heavy breathing as she tried to be sneaky. After that incident, I immediately canceled the card. I didn't use that card much and had other credit cards, so canceling it didn't cause me any problems. "You'll have to pay for the trip yourself," I told my mother-in-law. She was speechless, clearly not expecting me to catch her snooping. She probably thought she could take a free trip and keep mistreating me, but I wasn't going to fall for such a simple trick. I could hear her relatives in the background. "Emma, what do you mean you can't pay? What's going to happen with the Paris trips? They sounded frustrated, and my mother-in-law was scrambling to make excuses. I felt this conversation was pointless, so I sighed and said, "I'm hanging up now." She tried to say something, but I ended the call without hesitation. Shaking my head in disbelief, I organized my wallet and started packing for the move. I didn't have many personal things, so I knew it wouldn't take long. Once I finished packing my stuff, I planned to help Larry. But suddenly, the front door slammed open, and I heard frantic footsteps rushing toward my room.
What do you mean by this?
"You've made me look like a fool," my mother-in-law yelled. "Welcome back. How was your trip?" I said calmly. "The payment is on hold. You need to come with me to the store right now and pay the $35,000. As she ranted, I looked at her angrily. She had never seen me react this way, and it clearly shook her. "Why should I pay for your trip?" I said. "Peter and I are divorced. Legally, we're strangers now. You need to understand that." "How can you talk to your mother-in-law like that?" she snapped. "That's because you're not my mother-in-law anymore. Can't you see that? Are you stupid?" My words hit her hard, and her face quickly went pale. Before, I had been more patient because she was Peter's mother, but I decided I didn't need to hold back anymore. She glared at me and angrily said, "Do whatever you want. It'll be a relief if you're gone. Just leave behind Larry. He's supposed to inherit the house." I couldn't believe what she said, but before I could respond, Larry, who had just come home, walked in and changed the mood. "Stop joking like that," he said. "I'm leaving with Mom. Living here with Dad and you, Grandma, would be torture." "No amount of money could make me stay," Larry said. "Larry, what are you talking about? Have you been brainwashed by this fool?" My mother-in-law snapped at me, but Larry and I were shocked by her words. Larry responded, "The fool is you, Grandma. And what do you want me to inherit? There's nothing here worth inheriting, just an old house on useless land." He was right. The house wasn't valuable. It was an old building on unattractive land, and its value had gone down over the years. After that, my mother-in-law collapsed, exhausted, and we could only watch. I kept packing for the move and started working on the property division with Peter. Even though I couldn't expect much from his income, it was important to hold him accountable for his actions. I also demanded an apology from Peter's affair partner, and both of them were held responsible. While the property division might not have been a lot for Peter, it was a big blow to him. He ended up using all his savings and even selling personal belongings to get by. As they struggled financially, my mother-in-law, who couldn't control her spending, didn't look for a job. Eventually, Peter had to sell the house and land, which were worth very little. The small amount from the sale was all they had left to live on. They moved into a rundown apartment and faced more struggles every day. Finally, my mother-in-law found a job, but her difficult attitude made it hard for her to keep any job for long. Life has a way of surprising you when you least expect it. I'm Sydney, an economist. A few years ago, if you had asked me, I would have said I had everything: a loving husband, Colton, our sweet daughter, Bianca, and a cozy home that was all ours. But let me start from the beginning, back when our days were full of hope and dreams for the future. It was a lazy Thursday afternoon. The sunlight was peeking through the curtains, and the smell of fresh bread from Colton's bakery filled the air. Colton was in the kitchen, his hands covered in flour, focused on his work in a way that always made me smile. "Sydney, can you grab the vanilla extract? It's on the top shelf," Colton called out, not looking up from his mixing bowl. I walked to the pantry and reached for the bottle. "You know, you could put things where I can reach them," I teased as I handed it to him. Colton grinned, wiping his hands on his apron. "Where's the fun in that? I like it when you have to stretch," he joked. I rolled my eyes. "You're impossible, you know that. That's why you married me," he said with a playful smirk before turning back to his dough. In the living room, our 5-year-old, Bianca, was lying on the floor, surrounded by her coloring books. She was humming a tune as she focused on her drawing. "Mommy, look. I'm drawing a picture of our family," she said, waving me over. "It looks fantastic, Bianca," I said with a smile. Turning back to Colton, I brought up something that had been on my mind. Speaking of the bakery, have you thought about what we talked about? Maybe expanding? Colton's cheerful expression shifted, and a slight frown appeared. Sydney, we've been over this. The bakery is fine just the way it is. Why mess with something that's already good? I hesitated but pressed on. But we could do so much more. For Bianca's future. Maybe even get that house we've always dreamed about. Colton ran a hand through his hair, looking uneasy. I don't know, Sydney. I like the bakery small and manageable. A bigger place would just be more stress. I felt a wave of frustration but decided to let it go. Okay. I just think we should think bigger, that's all. Colton shrugged, his voice carrying a hint of irritation. Maybe, but let's just enjoy today, all right? No more talk about expanding. I nodded, not wanting to ruin the day. As the afternoon wore on, the warmth of the sunlight faded, and the day slowly came to an end. I couldn't shake the uneasy feeling. Colton and I used to be a team, dreaming and planning together, but lately, it felt like we were on different paths, especially when it came to our goals and future. As weeks turned into months, the fun and light conversations we used to share began to lose their spark. The bakery, once a symbol of our shared dreams, now felt like a reminder of missed opportunities. While I was busy moving up at work, Colton seemed happy to stay where he was. That's when the first signs of trouble started to show. One evening, after a tough day at work filled with deadlines and numbers, I came home exhausted. Colton was in the living room, feet up, scrolling through his phone. The bakery had closed early, and he hadn't picked up Bianca from school. My mom had stepped in again, like she often did these days. Colton, you were supposed to pick up Bianca today. I had a meeting and couldn't make it, I said, trying to keep calm. Colton didn't even look up. Oh, was that today? I forgot, he said casually. Forgot? Colton, this keeps happening. You need to step up, I said, my frustration starting to show. Finally, he looked up, and I could see the irritation in his eyes. I said, I'm sorry, Sydney. What more do you want? I'm not the only parent here. I took a deep breath, trying not to lose my temper. It's not just about picking up Bianca. It's about us, our future. Don't you think we should be doing more for her, for our families? Colton shrugged, his face blank. We're doing fine, Sydney. Why do you always want more? Can't you just be happy with what we have? I sat down, feeling a mix of sadness and frustration. I am happy, Colton. But I also want more for Bianca, for our family. Is that so wrong? Colton stood up abruptly, the chair scraping against the floor. You know what, Sydney? I'm tired of this. Every day it's the same thing. You want more. I'm going to my mom's. Before I could say anything, he grabbed his keys and left. I was alone with my thoughts and a heavy feeling of dread. This wasn't the first time he had run to his mother, Kate, when we argued. It was becoming his go-to move, and I was left wondering where I stood in our marriage. The next day, Kate called. Her tone was sharp and unfriendly. Sydney, what's this? I heard you and Colton are fighting again. You're pushing him too hard. He's happy with his bakery. Why can't you be? Kate's voice was sharp, full of blame. I gripped the phone tighter, trying to stay calm. Kate, I'm thinking about our future, about Bianca's future. Colton and I need to be on the same page, I said carefully. Well, maybe your page is the problem, Sydney. You're always wanting more. Colton is a simple man, and you knew that when you married him, she snapped back. A flash of anger rose in me. Simple doesn't mean stuck, Kate. I'm trying to build a better future for all of us.
She scoffed.
You're just being ungrateful and greedy. Colton is doing his best. You should appreciate that. The call ended soon after, with no solution. I hung up feeling more alone than ever. Trouble came fast and hard. Colton's bakery, once the heart of our small community, started losing customers. Bills piled up, and the cozy bakery began to feel more like a sinking ship. I worked long hours to keep us afloat, but it was like trying to bail water out of a boat with a hole in it. One evening, I came home and found Colton slumped at the kitchen table. A stack of bills was spread out in front of him, his face full of defeat. Colton, what's going on? I asked, my stomach sinking. He looked up, his eyes red and tired. The bakery, Sydney. I can't keep it running anymore. We're losing money. My heart sank. What are we going to do? We have Bianca to think about, I said, my voice shaking. Colton ran his hands through his hair, a gesture I'd seen too many times. I don't know, Sydney. I never thought it would come to this. I sat down beside him, trying to take it all in. Maybe it's time to consider other options. You could look for a job, at least until we figure things out, I suggested gently. Colton's expression hardened. A job? Work for someone else? I'm a business owner, Sydney, not some office drone, he snapped. I tried to keep my voice calm. Colton, this isn't about pride. It's about our family. We need to make ends meet. He stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. The tension in the room was suffocating. I don't need a lecture, Sydney. I know what's at stake. Colton snapped before storming out of the room, leaving me with a stack of unpaid bills and a head full of worries. The next day, I decided to call Kate. Maybe she could talk some sense into him. My hands shook as I dialed her number. Kate, it's about the bakery. Colton is really struggling, and I think he needs to consider looking for a job, I said, trying to sound calm. A job? My son isn't going to work for someone else. He's a business owner, Sydney. He's better than that, Kate shot back. I clenched my jaw, trying to keep my frustration in check. Kate, the bakery is closing. We have bills to pay, a daughter to raise. This isn't about being better than anything. It's about survival.
Kate scoffed.
Survive? You always exaggerate, Sydney. Colton will figure it out. He doesn't need to stoop to being an employee. The conversation went nowhere. I hung up, feeling more helpless than ever. Colton's refusal to face reality and Kate's blind support were a disaster waiting to happen. That night, Colton and I sat in silence. The tension between us was so thick it was suffocating. I wanted to scream, to yell, to shake some sense into him. But I knew it wouldn't help. The bakery's closure brought more than financial problems. It tore our family apart. Colton, once a busy and proud business owner, now spent his days idly lounging around the house. I came home from long, exhausting workdays to a messy house, dishes piled in the sink, laundry undone, and Bianca left to entertain herself. One evening, I got home later than usual, my head pounding after a day full of meetings. The house was a mess, and Colton was on the couch with a beer, watching TV. That was the last straw. Colton, what the hell? Look at this place. Can't you at least clean up a little? I snapped, my patience gone. Colton looked up unfazed. Oh, come on, Sydney. I'm not your maid. I had a rough day. I stared at him, shocked. Rough day? Doing what, Colton? You've been sitting here all day. He shrugged, taking another sip of his beer. I'm dealing with stuff, okay? It's not easy losing your business. I threw my bag down, frustration boiling over. And you think it's easy for me? Working all day to keep us afloat while you do nothing. Colton stood up, his face tight with anger. I'm not doing nothing, Sydney. I'm trying to figure things out. Figure what out, Colton? How to avoid responsibility. We have a daughter, for God's sake. I shouted, unable to hold back anymore. I shot back, my voice rising. Don't you think I know that? I don't need you ignoring the problem and making it worse. Colton yelled back, I don't need you nagging me every single day. Our argument grew louder, with harsh words and accusations flying between us. Suddenly, Bianca appeared in the doorway, her wide eyes filled with fear. Mommy, Daddy, please stop yelling, she pleaded, her voice small and shaky. We both froze, the anger draining out of us, as we looked at her. Colton muttered something under his breath and walked out, leaving me to comfort Bianca, who was now crying. I hugged her tightly, guilt and sadness washing over me. The days that followed were a blur of quiet meals, cold exchanges, and an ever-growing distance between us. I struggled to hold everything together, working long hours, managing the house, and taking care of Bianca, while Colton seemed to retreat deeper into himself. The tension in our home hung over us like a heavy cloud, an unwelcome presence that wouldn't leave. But nothing prepared me for what came next. It started with small amounts of cash disappearing from my purse. At first, I thought I was being forgetful, but then the amounts grew larger. One evening, after noticing another $100 missing, I decided to confront Colton. He was in the living room, glued to the TV as usual. "Colton, have you been taking money from my purse?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. He didn't even look at me.
What? No.
Why would I do that? Anger flared inside me. Because it's missing, Colton. And I know I didn't spend it. He finally turned to face me, his expression defensive. "Look, I needed some cash, okay? It's not a big deal." I stared at him, incredulous. "Not a big deal? It's stealing, Colton. From your own wife." He stood up, his voice rising. "I don't need a lecture, Sydney. I took a bit of cash for beer. It's not like I'm wasting it on something stupid." I couldn't believe what I was hearing.
Beer?
"You're stealing money for beer while I'm working day and night to hold this family together?" Colton's face hardened.
Yeah, beer.
"It's not like I have much else to enjoy these days." A mix of anger and sadness overwhelmed me. "That's your excuse? I'm out there busting my back, and you're sitting here drinking away our money." Colton scoffed. "Oh, please. You're always so dramatic. It's just a few bucks." His words cut deep. I felt like I didn't recognize the man standing in front of me anymore. I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. "This isn't just about the money, Colton. It's about trust. How can I trust you if you're stealing from me?" Colton didn't respond. He just turned back to the TV, shutting down the conversation. The next day, I made a decision and called Kate to talk about the situation. "It's about Colton," I began, trying to keep my emotions steady. "He's been taking money from my purse for beer." Kate laughed, the sound sharp and dismissive. "Oh, Sydney, you're making a big deal out of nothing. He's just going through a tough time." I couldn't believe her reaction. "Kate, he's stealing from me. How can you just brush that off? He's your husband, Sydney. What's yours is his," she said, her tone matter-of-fact. "Besides, it's just a bit of cash." Anger bubbled up inside me. "It's not about the amount, Kate. He's not contributing anything, and now he's taking what little we have left." Kate wouldn't budge. "I don't see the problem. He needs to unwind. You're being too hard on him." I hung up, realizing it was pointless. Kate was never going to understand or support me. One morning, I woke up to find Colton's side of the bed empty. That wasn't unusual anymore, but as the days stretched on with no word from him, I started to worry. I called his phone repeatedly, but it went straight to voicemail. Days passed, and finally, after a full week of silence, I heard the front door open. Colton walked in looking different. There was a strange confidence about him. And he wasn't alone. His mother, Kate, strutted in behind him, wearing a smug expression. "Colton, where the hell have you been?" "I've been worried sick," I exclaimed, feeling a mix of relief and anger. Colton smirked. "Oh, Sydney, always so dramatic. I have news." I frowned, confused. "News? What news?" He pulled out a lottery ticket and waved it in front of me. "This, my dear Sydney, is our ticket out. I won. I won $30 million. My heart skipped a beat.
What? How?
Kate chimed in, her tone dripping with smugness. "He bought the lottery ticket with your credit card. Looks like it was a smart investment after all." I was stunned, my mind racing. "My credit card? You used my credit card without asking?" I said, my voice shaking. Colton's smirk grew wider. "Well, I needed something to cheer me up after all the nagging. And look, it paid off." The reality hit me like a ton of bricks. He had taken my card, bought a lottery ticket, and won.
It was almost too much to process.
"But Colton, that's our money." "We won," I said, still trying to make sense of it. Colton's expression turned cold. "No, Sydney. I won. And with this money, I'm starting a new life. Without you." It felt like the ground had disappeared beneath me. "What are you saying?" I asked, my voice trembling. He didn't hesitate, his words sharp and cruel. "I'm saying I'm leaving you, Sydney. I'm tired of this life. Tired of you. I want a fresh start, and now I can afford it." Kate laughed, the sound sharp and mean. Oh, Sydney, you really thought you were so clever, didn't you? But you underestimated my son. He's a winner, and you're left with nothing. Colton grabbed a suitcase, clearly packed earlier. I'm moving in with Mom. You can keep the house and whatever else. I don't need it anymore. As Colton walked out, leaving me in shock and heartbreak, I knew I couldn't just let this happen. I had to act. The first thing I did was call a lawyer. Mr. Lucas, I began, my voice trembling. My husband won the lottery with a ticket he bought using my credit card. Now he's leaving me and taking everything. Mr. Lucas, a straightforward and experienced lawyer, listened calmly. All right, Sydney. Let's meet tomorrow. Bring any documents you have and we'll figure this out. The next day, I sat in his office, handing over bank statements and the credit card transaction that showed the purchase of the lottery ticket. Mr. Lucas studied the papers carefully. Based on this, we have a strong case, he said confidently. The ticket was bought with your money, which gives you a claim to the winnings. I felt a flicker of hope. So, what's our next step? We'll file for a court injunction to freeze the lottery winnings until this is resolved. Then we'll prepare for a court battle, he said firmly. The court date came faster than I expected. Colton and Kate were there, their smug expressions as if they had already won. My heart was pounding as I walked into the courtroom, ready to fight for what was rightfully mine. I took my seat in the courtroom, Mr. Lucas sitting beside me. The judge, a stern-looking woman, called the court to order. Mr. Lucas began presenting our case, laying out clear and simple arguments. He focused on the credit card transaction and my role as the main financial support for our family. Colton's lawyer argued that the lottery ticket should be considered separate from our marital assets. But Mr. Lucas countered every point, showing how our finances were shared and highlighting that Colton had contributed little to the household. Then it was Colton's turn to take the stand. His lawyer asked, Mr. Olivier, did you use your wife's credit card to purchase the lottery ticket? Colton replied, a hint of arrogance in his voice. Yes, but it was just luck. It had nothing to do with her. The lawyer continued, and what were your intentions with the winnings? Colton glanced at me before answering, to start a new life. I was tired of being underappreciated and belittled. I felt a surge of anger, but kept quiet. When it was my turn to testify, Mr. Lucas asked, Mrs. Olivier, can you tell the court about your financial contributions to your household? I took a deep breath. I've been the main provider for the past few years. I've paid the bills, taken care of our daughter, and even supported Colton's mother financially. The judge listened carefully, taking notes as I spoke. After both sides finished their arguments, the judge called for a recess before making her decision. The wait was nerve-wracking. When we were called back in, the judge looked at us both and delivered her verdict. Considering the evidence and circumstances, I rule that the lottery winnings are a joint marital asset. I award 3/4 of the winnings to Mrs. Olivier and 1/4 to Mr. Olivier. Colton's face was frozen in shock, and Kate's smug expression vanished. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. This wasn't just a legal win, it was justice. After the courtroom drama, my life took a new turn. My focus was on Bianca and building a secure future for us. I invested the winnings wisely, making sure we would be financially stable. Meanwhile, I heard through mutual acquaintances that Colton and Kate had squandered their share on unnecessary luxuries and were now left with nothing. One day, while I was out running errands, I bumped into Colton. He looked like a shadow of his former self, unshaven, wearing wrinkled clothes, with a defeated air about him. Sydney, he said, his voice bitter, look at what you've done to me. I looked at him calmly and said, no, Colton, look at what you've done to yourself. Then I walked away, ready to focus on the life I had fought to rebuild. I'm broke, in debt, and they're taking the house, Colton blurted out, desperation in his voice. I looked at him, feeling no sympathy. Colton, you did this to yourself. You and your mother couldn't handle the money, and now you're paying the price. He scowled, bitterness clear in his tone. So what? You're just going to gloat? Watch me suffer. I shook my head firmly. I'm not gloating, Colton. I'm just living my life. You made your choices and I made mine. I cut him off as he tried to interrupt. You and your mother never forgave me for taking what was rightfully mine. You wasted your share without thinking about the future. That's on you." Colton's face twisted with anger, but I saw a flicker of regret in his eyes. "You could have shared more, you could have." I interrupted him again. "I could have what, Colton? Bailed you out after you betrayed me? After you and your mother laughed in my face?"
No. I've moved on.
He stood there, defeated, as I turned and walked away. In that moment, I realized how far I had come. I had faced betrayal and heartache, but I didn't let it destroy me. Instead, I built a better life for Bianca and me, a life grounded in hard work and smart choices. My name is Kelly, and I'm 23 years old. I live with my parents and my younger sister, Lauren, who's 16. These days, Mom and Dad work long hours at the local factory just so we can pay the bills. But life wasn't always like this. When I was younger, things were very different. My parents used to run a successful business, and we lived in a big, beautiful one-story house. It had a porch that went all the way around, and I loved sitting there dreaming about the future. I still remember the smell of the roses from Mom's garden and Dad's laugh during our game nights in the big living room. Everything started to change when I was 17. The business began to fail. One bad month turned into another, and soon we were deep in debt. The first thing we lost was the house. I remember the day we moved out. Lauren was skipping down the driveway, not knowing we weren't ever coming back. She was only 11 then, too young to understand why we now had to live in a small, rented apartment instead of our nice home. I got a part-time job at Larry's Cafe after school, serving coffee and sandwiches to people who used to come to our house for parties. It felt strange, but we needed the money. Mom and Dad both got jobs at the factory too, but even with that, the money wasn't enough because of the debt and our daily costs. While I was getting used to eating instant noodles and wearing secondhand clothes, Lauren was living a totally different life. She'd come home from school asking for new phones, name-brand clothes, and big birthday parties. And somehow, Mom and Dad always said yes. "She's too young to understand," they'd tell me. "We don't want her to feel left out. But can we even afford this?" I'd ask, watching them charge another thing to their already maxed-out credit card. "Don't worry about it, Kelly," Mom would say, brushing Lauren's hair. "She just needs time to adjust." But how could Lauren adjust to a life she didn't even know had changed? While I was counting every penny and working extra hours, Lauren acted like nothing had changed. Getting that college scholarship felt like winning the lottery. I still remember the day the acceptance letter came. Mom and Dad hugged me, and even Lauren looked a little impressed, though she quickly went back to playing with her new iPad. "You've always been the smart one," Dad said, his eyes shining with pride. It was one of the rare times I felt noticed. Usually it was all about Lauren. College was hard, but it was worth it. While other students complained about student loans, I felt thankful every day for the scholarship that paid for my education. I studied business because I wanted to help my parents rebuild the life we had lost. When I graduated, I already had a job waiting for me at Jeremy and Associates, a well-known company in our town. The pay wasn't amazing, but it was enough to help my family. I decided to stay at home to save money, and also because I knew my parents still needed help with their debts. But not everything was easy. While I stopped shopping and eating out to help with bills, Lauren's spending only got worse. One evening, I came home tired after a long day at work. I hadn't eaten all day, and my stomach was growling. I opened the fridge and saw only condiments and a half-full carton of milk. "Mom, what's for dinner?" I asked, already expecting bad news. "Oh, honey, we're a bit short this week," she said from the living room. "Maybe we could order pizza?" That's when Lauren came bouncing down the stairs, wearing what looked like a brand new designer jacket. The price tag was still on it, $500. $500. That could have bought groceries for 3 weeks. "Where did that jacket come from?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. "Isn't it cute?" Lauren spun around. "Olivia and Janet both have one, and Mom said I could get it too." "Mom, are you serious?" I turned to her. "We don't even have food, but Lauren gets another jacket." "Kelly, please," Mom said, with that tone I hated. Lauren has to fit in at school. You know how teenagers are. Yeah, Kelly, Lauren added, rolling her eyes. You don't get it. All my friends have the newest stuff. Do you know how embarrassing it is to be the only one without new phone or clothes? I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell Lauren what real embarrassment feels like wearing the same clothes to work over and over because every dollar I made went toward paying off our family's debt. But I didn't say anything. I just stood there, hungry, watching her smile at herself in the hallway mirror. We need to talk about what really matters, I said, looking at my parents. We can't keep living like this. Lauren needs to understand. She needs to fit in with her friends, Dad interrupted, not even looking up from his newspaper. You know how mean kids can be. All those rich girls at her school and their fancy stuff. I gave up. What was the point? I couldn't win against Lauren's tears and my parents' never-ending excuses. While I tracked every cent I spent, Lauren's friends kept showing off their latest gadgets and clothes, and my parents kept trying to keep up, even if it meant we had no food. It all started with $3,000. I kept the money in my wallet hidden behind my driver's license. It was my emergency fund, money I'd saved slowly, $1 at a time. One morning, I opened my wallet to add $150 for my paycheck, and the money was gone. Just gone. My hands shook as I dumped my wallet out onto the bed. I checked every pocket, again and again. But deep down, I already knew. I'd seen Lauren looking at my wallet the day before, when I left it on the kitchen counter while I was making dinner. Lauren. I marched into her room without knocking. Did you take money from my wallet? She looked up from her phone, her eyes wide like she was shocked. What? No. How could you even say that? $1,000 is missing, I said. And you're the only one who... I can't believe you, she shouted. Tears started pouring down her face, making her mascara run. How dare you accuse me of stealing? I'm your sister. Her crying brought Mom running. What's going on? She asked. Kelly thinks I stole money from her. Lauren cried, throwing herself into Mom's arms. She hates me. She always has, because you love me more. Mom gave me that same disappointed look I'd seen so many times before. How could you say that about your sister? She asked. I just stood there, watching Lauren cry like she was in a movie. And for a second, I actually started to doubt myself. Maybe I had lost the money. Maybe I had spent it and forgot. Maybe someone at work had taken it. After that, I stopped using cash. I only used my card from then on. No more missing money, no more questions. Problem solved, or at least I thought so. Then came the dress. I was doing laundry when Lauren walked through the front door, smiling and wearing what looked like a designer dress, something super expensive, the kind of dress that costs more than our rent. Where did that come from? I asked, my arms full of wet clothes. Oh, this old thing, she said, spinning around as the dress swished around her legs. I've had it forever. Mom? Dad? I called out. Did you buy Lauren another expensive dress? They looked confused. Dad frowned. No, we didn't buy her any dress. That's when the alarm bells went off in my head. Where was a 16-year-old getting designer clothes from? The possibilities made me feel sick. Was she shoplifting? Hanging out with the wrong people? Selling drugs? That night, I sat at my desk, all kinds of scary thoughts running through my head. Then I remembered something, my card. With shaky hands, I logged into my bank account and asked for a detailed statement for the past month. 3 days later, the email came, and 3 charges jumped out at me. $1,000 at JCPenney. $1,200 at Barney's, New York. $1,700 at Bergdorf Goodman. Each one showed the items bought: a size 6 dress, a medium blouse, size 7 shoes, Lauren sizes, her favorite brands, her new clothes. My stomach turned. She hadn't just taken cash from my wallet. She'd been using my card all along. That new dress? It wasn't from a sketchy place. It was paid for with my money. I found her in her room, trying on one of the outfits. One of my outfits, really, since I paid for them. Nice dress, I said, standing in the doorway. Bergdorf Goodman, right? About $1,700. She froze for a second, but then kept her cool. What are you talking about? Stop pretending, Lauren, I said. I have the credit card statement right here. I held up the papers. 3 shopping trips, $5,000. All in your size. All from your favorite stores. You're crazy, she said, but her voice was shaky. Really? I asked. Should we call the stores? I'm sure their security cameras got some good video. Maybe you shopping with my card? Her face went pale for a second, but she quickly snapped back. Whatever. You can't prove anything.
Mom.
Dad. I yelled. Family meeting.
Now.
They came into the living room. Dad still in his work clothes, Mom wiping her hands on a dish towel. I laid the bank statements out on the coffee table. Look at this, I said, pointing at the charges. Lauren's been using my credit card. She spent $5,000 on clothes. Kelly, that's a serious claim, Dad said, frowning and adjusting his glasses. Are you sure you didn't just forget? Forget spending $5,000? On clothes in Lauren's exact size? I interrupted. Really, Dad? Mom picked up the papers and squinted at the list. Well, even if, and I'm not saying she did, but even if Lauren used your card, she's going through a tough time. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Are you serious right now? Teenagers make mistakes, Mom said, patting Lauren's hand. It's part of growing up. Remember when you were her age? When I was her age, I wasn't stealing thousands of dollars from my own family. I said, my voice rising. Don't be so dramatic, Kelly, Mom sighed. If it really was Lauren and we're not saying it was, maybe we can just think of it as an early birthday present. I stared at her in shock. A birthday present? I said. She stole from me. This is credit card fraud. Now you're just making it sound worse than it is, Mom said, waving her hand like it was nothing. Lauren's in a tricky stage. Her friends have nice things, and she wants to fit in. You should try to be more understanding. Understanding. I felt like I was going crazy. She took $5,000 from me. Kelly, Dad said finally, your mother's right. You're blowing this out of proportion. Just let it go. Lauren sat there the whole time, a little smirk on her face. She knew she had won. She always won. You don't understand what you're doing, I shouted, my throat tight with frustration. This isn't just about the money anymore. If she's stealing from her own family now, what's next? She could get into real trouble. There it is, Dad said, shaking his head. You're just jealous. You've always been jealous of your sister. I let out a bitter laugh. Jealous? Jealous of what? Being a thief? Being spoiled?
See?
Mom said, motioning toward me. That's what jealousy looks like. You hate that we give Lauren nice things. That night, I couldn't stay in the house another second. The walls felt like they were closing in, and every look from my family felt like a knife in my back. I grabbed my keys and drove off into the night, not even sure where I was going. Eventually, I ended up in front of Julie's apartment. She'd been my closest friend since we started working together, and right then, I needed someone who could actually see the truth. Julie's place always felt safe. She let me in without asking questions and listened without judgment while I told her everything. I told Julie the whole awful story, the stolen money, the credit card charges, and how my parents refused to hold Lauren accountable. The wine Julie poured helped me calm down a little, but it didn't take away the pain of feeling betrayed by my own family. This is crazy, she said when I finished. Your sister needs a serious wake-up call before she ends up in real trouble. I've tried everything, I said with a sigh. But my parents just keep making excuses for her. Julie was quiet for a moment, slowly swirling her wine. Then she said, You know, my Uncle Peter is a police officer. Maybe he could help. I looked up. What do you mean? He could stop by your house and talk to your sister. Give her a scare, let her see this isn't just some little mistake. He's done it before for other families. Sometimes kids need to feel the consequences before they learn. Over the next 3 days, we planned everything carefully. It had to feel real. Lauren had to believe this was serious, that she was in real trouble. We chose a night when the whole family would be home. Dinner time. That evening, we all sat at the dinner table like it was a normal night. Mom had made lasagna, and the smell filled the house. Normally, it would have felt warm and comforting, but I could barely eat, knowing what was coming. As usual, Lauren took over the conversation, completely unaware that her world was about to change. When the doorbell rang, Lauren jumped up. "I'll get it," she said, probably thinking it was one of her friends. But standing on the porch was Officer Jeremy, his uniform neat, his badge shining under the porch light. Lauren froze. Her face went pale, and she backed away from the door, nearly tripping. "What's going on?" Mom asked, rushing to the door, with Dad right behind her. "I called them," I said, standing up. My voice was calm, even though my heart was racing. "Someone stole $5,000 from my credit card. I want to know who did it." Officer Jeremy stepped into our living room. The whole room went quiet. His presence brought a serious, heavy feeling none of us could ignore. Lauren dropped onto the couch, already crying. Our parents stood nearby, looking shocked and unsure of what to do. "Miss Lauren," Officer Jeremy began, his voice calm but firm, "we have strong evidence of credit card fraud linked to this address. Store receipts, video footage, and witness statements all point to you." Lauren's sobs got louder, but Officer Jeremy didn't stop. "I've seen cases like this before," Officer Jeremy said. "Good kids from good families who thought stealing just a little was no big deal. Do you know where most of them ended up?" He paused and let the question hang in the air. Lauren shook her head slowly, mascara running down her cheeks. "There was one girl about your age," he continued. "She started by stealing from her family too. Thought it didn't matter. Just last month, I had to arrest her for grand theft. Now she's facing real jail time." He leaned in a little. "Is that what you want, Lauren?" Mom tried to interrupt, but Officer Jeremy held up his hand. "Ma'am, your daughter needs to understand how serious this is. Credit card fraud is a real crime. Right now, we can keep this in the family if the money is returned and this behavior stops immediately. But if it continues..." He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. I stood in the doorway, watching as Lauren finally realized what she'd done. The weight of her choices hit her hard. For once, she had to face real consequences. When Officer Jeremy left, I thought my parents would finally understand. Maybe they'd see I was only trying to protect her. I couldn't have been more wrong. The second the door closed, Mom spun around to face me, angrier than I'd ever seen her. "How dare you?" she screamed. Her face was red with rage. "How dare you bring the police into this house?" I stepped back, shocked. Mom never swore. "She's 16, she shouted. "She's just a child, and you called the police on her? What kind of monster are you?" "I was trying to help her," I said, my voice shaking. She needed to see. "You weren't trying to help anyone," Mom snapped. "You're just jealous. You've always been jealous of Lauren. You're nothing but a selfish, ungrateful piece of trash." Dad, who hadn't said a word until then, stepped forward. His voice was quiet, but cold as ice. "Get out. Get out of this house. You're no daughter of mine. No daughter of mine would do this to her sister." I looked at them. My mother's twisted face full of anger, my father's calm rejection, and Lauren's smirk behind her fake tears. And suddenly, I felt calm. The next morning, I packed my life into boxes and suitcases. It's strange how 18 years of memories can fit into such a small space. Each thing I packed reminded me of something: my high school graduation photo, the mug I used every morning for coffee, the blanket Mom gave me for Christmas years ago. I left that blanket behind. Lauren stood in her doorway watching as I carried boxes to my car. She didn't offer to help, and I didn't ask. Mom and Dad had already left for work. Neither of them said goodbye. The silence in the house was louder than any words. Finding an apartment wasn't hard. My job at Jeremy and Associates paid well enough for a small one-bedroom place across town. It wasn't fancy, but it was mine. No stolen credit cards. No family drama. No guilt. Just quiet. During that first month, I started building a new routine. I bought secondhand furniture, figured out which grocery store had the best deals, and learned which neighbors smiled back when I said hello. It wasn't perfect, but it was peaceful. Then, one normal Saturday evening, my phone lit up. Mom was calling. Kelly, she said. Her voice was softer than it had been the last time we talked. Your father and I have been talking. We forgive you for what happened. I almost laughed. They forgave me? We want you to come home, she continued. And, well, we need help with the loan payment this month. Things have been tight since you left. That old, heavy feeling of guilt tried to creep in. But this time I didn't let it. No, I said. You don't get to call me names, throw me out, treat me like I'm nothing, and then ask for my help. I'm done. Kelly, please. I hung up. Then I blocked her number. I blocked Dad's and Lauren's too. It felt awful, but also freeing. Then came the emails, urgent messages about late payments and money problems. I blocked those too. Next came the social media messages. From family, friends, distant relatives, anyone they could get to speak for them. Each message talked about family, forgiveness, and how I should help. I blocked them all. They even showed up at my office one Sunday morning. I watched from the third-floor window as they stood in the lobby, arguing with security. I had already told the guards not to let them up. Dad looked older than I remembered, like the weight of their money problems was dragging him down. Mom was crying, making a scene, classic mom. I turned away from the window and went back to my desk. I had contracts to review, meetings to attend, a life to live. A life that was finally, truly mine. 7 months have passed since then. It's been 7 months since I last spoke to my family. My small apartment feels like a real home now. It's filled with plants, books, and a kind of peace I didn't know I needed. Sometimes, when I'm curled up on my secondhand couch with a cup of tea, watching the sunset through my window, I wonder how they're doing. Julie keeps me updated, even though I never ask her to. She still lives nearby and runs into my family once in a while. Last week, she told me Dad has taken a second job at the hardware store. He works evenings and weekends now. The thought of him, already tired from years at the factory, spending his nights stocking shelves makes my chest feel heavy. He's working himself to the bone because they can't keep up without my help. The bank is trying to help them with their loan, but it's tough. Mom's been going to the branch office in tears, trying to get sympathy. But banks don't care about crying moms or teenage daughters who want expensive clothes. They care about money, and my parents are running out of options. Their lifestyle has changed a lot since I left. No more shopping sprees for Lauren. No more new phones or designer outfits. Julie told me she saw my sister wearing the same clothes twice in 1 week, something that would have never happened before. Part of me hopes this is finally teaching her a lesson, something my parents never did. But honestly, I'm not sure. Sometimes, especially late at night when everything is quiet, guilt creeps in. I think about Dad, his rough hands from years at the factory, now working late at the hardware store instead of resting. I think about Mom, who, no matter what, is still my mother. And yes, I even think about Lauren, who's only 16, still a kid in many ways, shaped by years of being spoiled. But then I remember the night they threw me out. I remember Mom calling me trash, Dad saying I wasn't his daughter, and Lauren smiling behind her fake tears. I remember all the years I gave everything and got nothing in return. I was treated like an ATM, not a daughter. The guilt I used to feel is now gone. In its place is a strong need to protect the peace I've finally found. Some friends tell me I should try to make up with my family. They say family is family no matter what. But they don't understand. Making peace takes effort from both sides. It means admitting what went wrong. My parents still think they didn't do anything wrong. They just want me back so they can ask for money again. As for Lauren, she probably hasn't thought about me at all, except maybe when she misses her endless shopping budget. Maybe one day things will be different. Maybe Dad will realize that always defending Lauren hurt more than it helped. Maybe Mom will understand that real love isn't about buying expensive clothes or maxing out credit cards. Maybe Lauren will grow up and understand what she lost when she broke my trust. Maybe they'll miss me for me, not for what I can give them. But until that day comes, I'm building my own life. I got a promotion at work last month. I'm even thinking about buying a place instead of renting. I'm learning who I am without my family's demands weighing me down. And I'm learning something else too. It's possible to miss people and still know you're better off without them. Karen, I need to ask you for a favor. I hurt my arm and can't work right now, so I'm on leave from my part-time job. Without work, I don't get paid, and life is hard. Could you lend me some money to help cover my living expenses? My husband and mother-in-law tricked me into giving them money. I trusted them and wanted to help, but I found out later that my husband was having an affair, and my mother-in-law was using the money for gambling. I felt completely betrayed when I discovered the truth. When I confronted them, they got angry. I couldn't take it anymore and decided to get a divorce. But they insulted me, saying I wouldn't be able to marry again because I only graduated from junior high. They were happy to be rid of me as their daughter-in-law. Their cruel words made me realize that just divorcing them wasn't enough. I couldn't forgive their betrayal. I want them to pay for what they did to me. My name is Karen. I'm 27 years old and have been married for 5 years. My husband, Paul, works at a clothing store. We met when he came to the family restaurant where I worked as a waitress. He asked me out one day, and I said yes because I had never had much experience with men and felt lonely. I grew up with my mom after my dad left us following an affair that led to my parents' divorce. My mom did her best for me, but when I was supposed to go to high school, she got sick and couldn't work. I had to quit school and work to support us. A few years later, I met Paul, who was older than me. He seemed mature and attractive, and he took me to many places. I was really moved when he asked, "Where should we go next time?" The seaside sounds nice, and a spa trip would be fun, right? Since I hadn't done much of that before, his plans felt fresh and exciting. My husband always took me to new places, like a prince from a storybook. I was so enchanted by the idea of an ideal life that I decided to marry him just 5 months after we started dating. My mother warned me it was too soon, but maybe because she felt guilty about not being able to give me a full youth, she didn't push too hard against it. My mother had fully recovered and gone back to work, and my husband was also an only child from a single-parent family, which might have influenced our decision to get married. When I first met my mother-in-law, she was very nice and kind, but I still felt uneasy around her and couldn't help but dislike her. I talked to my husband about it, and he said, "Don't worry about it. I was nervous when I first met your mother too. You'll get used to it, and if there's a problem, I'll support you." His comforting words eased my mind, but I still didn't really understand who he was at that time. After we got married, we decided to buy a condo instead of renting. He said, "It's smarter to buy a condo and pay the mortgage. It'll eventually become an asset. Since you, Karen, have more work experience than me, it'll be easier to get the mortgage approved in your name." I agreed without any doubts and was happy to live with him. Soon after we started living together, I was asked to work night shifts. I have a hard time saying no, so I agreed, even though it meant we had little time together as newlyweds. One day, when we both had a day off, we were relaxing at home when he said, "Hey, I'm sorry to ask, but could you lend me some money?" I was surprised and asked why he needed it so suddenly. He explained with a serious look, "Sales at the store have dropped, and my salary was cut. I didn't want to worry you." I felt bad for him and said, "That must be tough. Don't worry, I'll help you out. We're a couple, so there's no need to feel bad about it." "Do you still have some savings?" he asked. "Yes, just a little, but I'm making more with the night shifts, so I'll cover for you," I replied. He thanked me, and I continued to support him financially, but over time, I lost track of how much I was giving him. I had lent him money, and everything should have been fine. But then, out of the blue, my mother-in-law showed up. "Lisa, what brings you here?" I asked, surprised to see her with a bandage on her arm. "Karen, I fell down the stairs and broke my right arm," she replied. "Oh no, are you okay? Have you told Paul about this?" "No, I don't want to worry him, so I haven't mentioned it yet." "I see. It must be hard to stand and talk here. Please come inside. I said, leading her to the living room. Once we sat down, she started, Karen, I've come to ask you for a favor. I can't work with this arm, and I'm currently on leave from my part-time job. Without working, I don't get paid, and life is tough. Could you possibly lend me some money for living expenses? Me? I asked, surprised. Yes, there are things I can't discuss with Paul. You're the only one I can ask. Feeling that I couldn't refuse, I decided to lend her $3,000, hoping it might help improve our relationship. I had been giving the extra money I earned from my night shifts to my husband, so I had to dip into my savings to help my mother-in-law. This was tough for me. Even when I was tired, I tried to save money by cooking at home and making lunch for my husband. Sometimes, I ate instant food or skipped meals to cut costs. During this frugal time, I found a strand of blonde hair while cleaning the house. It clearly wasn't mine or my husband's, and I was deeply disturbed. This had to be a sign that my husband was having an affair and had brought someone into our home while I was at work. I was distraught and started searching for more evidence. Then, I found one of his payslips. Checking it, I discovered that there had been no cut in his salary at all. In fact, it was higher than what he had told me. I was shocked by both his cheating and his lies about the money. Not knowing who to turn to, I decided to visit my mother-in-law, thinking about the money I had lent her. I was sure she would support me. But as I approached her house, I saw something that stunned me: my mother-in-law coming out of a casino. Lisa, what are you doing here? I asked, shocked. She looked surprised but tried to stay calm. Karen, why are you here? I came to talk to you, but you were playing slots. I thought you said you were out of money. I replied, confused and hurt. I only used a little of that money, she said. That's the money I lent you, isn't it? I asked. No, it was just a little left over from my last paycheck. I'm using the money you lent me for this month's living expenses, she replied. I didn't believe her, but I was more concerned about the issues with my husband, so I decided not to push it further. Karen, I ended up taking leave from work for the rest of the month, so I won't have a salary next month. Could you possibly lend me some money for my living expenses? She asked. Her lies were obvious. She wasn't even wearing the brace on her arm anymore. Still, I decided to lend her the money to stay on good terms with her. Of course, but can we talk for a bit? I said. Thank you, Karen. You really are understanding. It's such a relief, she said, pleased, and we went back to her house. Once inside, I told her everything about my husband. Men always cheat. I went through a lot when I was young. Why don't you try fighting back, Karen? She suggested, shocking me with her inappropriate advice. As for the money, I'm not sure. I haven't talked to Paul lately, but maybe just wait a bit longer. He'll probably pay everything back at once. Her careless response left me speechless. So, can I borrow the money for next month's living expenses today? I have some bills coming up, she pressed. What, today? Could you come back in a week, at night? I asked. That's fine, she agreed. 2 weeks later, on my day off, I planned to confront my husband in front of her. The day arrived, and I eagerly awaited them at home. She arrived first. Karen, I'm here, Lisa said. Please come in, I replied. It's okay, I'll just stay here. I'll leave as soon as I get the money. I don't want to overstay my welcome in a newlywed's home, she said hesitantly, but it was clear she was only interested in the money. It seemed she had lost interest in seeing her son. Lisa, you don't need that arm brace anymore, do you? Then there shouldn't be a problem meeting Paul. He'll be back soon, so please wait in the living room. I'll give you the money secretly so Paul doesn't know. Don't worry, I said. Yes, I might as well see Paul after a long time, she agreed. I had invited her over to confront my husband with her present. If she left now, my plan would fail. Even if she was using me, I needed her to stay. I needed to use her to protect myself. She sat quietly in the living room, drinking coffee, looking like she didn't want to stay long. Then my husband came home. On my days off, he always came home at the same time, as if to show he wasn't cheating. "I'm home," he said. "Welcome back. Your mother is here too," I replied. Paul looked surprised. "Mom, what are you doing here so late?" "I just came to see how you and Karen are doing," she said. "Really? That's unusual. First, sit down. I'll make some coffee." I made coffee, and the three of us sat in the living room. Even though it was rare for them to be together, my husband and mother-in-law barely spoke. The silence was strange, almost like they didn't care about each other anymore. But this quiet moment gave me the chance to bring up the real issue. "Actually, there's something I need to ask you," I said. "Since your mother is here, I'd like her to hear it too." "What do you want to ask?" he replied. I pulled out the strand of blonde hair and showed it to them. "What is this?" Paul's expression changed. "I don't know. Maybe it's someone else's hair," he said, clearly annoyed. "I found this while I was cleaning your room," I continued. "Well, I deal with a lot of people at work, so it must have stuck to my clothes." I decided to confront him directly. "Are you cheating on me?" "What? Of course not. Are you doubting me just because of that?" he snapped. "It's not just the hair. There's other evidence too," I said, though in reality, I had no other proof. I just had a strong feeling he was being unfaithful. "What other evidence? Be specific," he demanded. Not wanting to push further, I quickly changed the subject. "Also, your salary hasn't been cut, has it? I found your payslip while cleaning." "Why are you looking at that without permission?" he shot back. "First, I want the money I've lent you back," I said firmly. "Why all of a sudden? You know I can't pay it back. Didn't you say we shouldn't strain ourselves because we're family?" "I didn't lend you money so you could use it for cheating," I responded. "I'm not using it for cheating," he protested. "So you admit to cheating?" I asked, pressing him. "That's a dirty trick," he accused. At that moment, I realized he had indeed been unfaithful. Whatever feelings I had left for him were gone. Ignoring Paul's reaction, I turned to his mother. "Lisa, if I can't get the money from Paul, I can't lend you any more." "Karen, that's not fair," she replied. "I came all this way just for the money. That's so cruel." It was clear that both Paul and his mother only cared about themselves. They didn't see any problem with Paul borrowing money from me without his mother knowing or that he was having an affair. It felt like they saw our marriage as an opportunity to take advantage of me. As the situation got worse, I knew I had to make a decision. "I can't live with you anymore. I'm filing for divorce," I said. Paul and his mother were shocked by my words. "If you divorce, you'll never be able to marry again," Paul sneered. "So, you've always looked down on me like that?" "Yes, because you're just a high school graduate," he replied. "How does education have anything to do with marriage?" I asked, but his insult still hurt me, even though I expected it. "Karen, calm down," his mother interrupted. "You just want my money, right?" "That's not true," I replied. "But I can't lend you any more money, and I need you to return the $3,000 I lent you before." "What will you do?" I asked, watching her expression change. "If that's the case, fine. I have no further business here," she said, showing her true feelings. I realized then that I was just an ATM to her. She sighed, clearly fed up. "I'll finally be free from this unpleasant daughter-in-law. I don't mind if you divorce." Paul seemed uninterested, looking at his phone. "I don't want anything to do with you anymore," I said, placing the divorce papers I had prepared in front of him. "You had this ready?" he asked. "I've already filled out my part. It just needs your signature. I'll come to pick it up tomorrow." Paul and his mother looked at the divorce papers without any emotion, saying nothing. I quickly left the house and went straight to my parents' home. "I'm back," I said when I arrived. "What happened? Why are you here alone so late?" my mom asked. "Mom, I think I rushed into marriage. I should have listened to your advice, I admitted. What exactly happened? She asked. I explained everything to her. So, that's what was going on. I should have opposed it more. I'm really sorry. It's not your fault, but I'm not going to end it with just a divorce. I'll get back the money I lent them, and I'll seek the right compensation. But do you have proof of his cheating and debt? She asked. It's okay. I had a feeling this might happen, so I recorded all our conversations earlier. I said, showing her the recorder. Thinking ahead like that, you're quite something, she said. Yes, unfortunately, my prediction was right. I'll talk to a lawyer tomorrow. Indeed, you can't just let this go. If there's anything I can help with, don't hesitate to ask. Thank you, Mom. Can I stay here for a while? Of course, this is your home, my mom said. I really appreciate it, I replied. That night, I couldn't sleep, filled with humiliation and disappointment. The next day, I went back to my house to get the signed divorce papers and made sure Paul had signed them. Then, I went straight to the condo management company to start the process of selling the condo. Since the title was in my name, everything went smoothly. I had no intention of living there anymore, and I didn't feel the need to inform Paul. The property was mine, I bought it and paid for it, so there was no reason to let my estranged husband live there. At the same time, I hired movers to take out all the household items, which I had bought and owned. A few days after the move, Paul called, shocked to find the house empty. What's going on? The TV and fridge, everything's gone, he exclaimed. Since I paid for everything myself, why should I leave them there for you? Never set foot in this house again. Your belongings are no longer here, I replied calmly. His reaction was predictable. He was upset, but the situation was far from over. A few days later, after a visit from the condo manager, Paul called again. What are you doing? Why did you sell the condo? You even took the TV. That house is mine, he yelled. The condo was in my name, and I made all the payments. It's only natural for me to sell it since I no longer plan to live there, I explained. Don't be stupid. Where am I supposed to live now? He asked angrily. That's not my problem. Why don't you go live with your affair partner? I replied. This isn't a joke. I won't forgive you, he shouted, but his words didn't matter to me. How could he expect to keep living in a condo he never paid for? It made no sense. Then, I took the next step. I demanded compensation from Paul for his infidelity and asked my mother-in-law to repay the money I had lent her, with interest. The day they received the invoices, I got an angry call from Paul. Hey, what is this? Why are you asking for so much money? He demanded. I'm asking for compensation because of your cheating. Please pay it soon, I replied firmly. There's no reason I should pay that. It's insane. You don't even have any proof, he argued. If you need proof, I have it. I recorded all our recent conversations with your mom, and your admission of infidelity is on tape, I said. No way, you recorded it? He asked, stunned. Yes, I couldn't trust you anymore. If necessary, I can access the condo building's elevator surveillance footage to see who visited while I was working night shifts. Also, I've been recording all our calls recently. You said this won't end here, which could be considered a threat. I plan to claim additional compensation, I warned. All right, it was a mistake, he finally admitted. I won't contact you again, he said before hanging up. After that, I didn't hear from him anymore. My mother-in-law, however, did reach out. Expecting that my husband had told her something, I didn't respond. But she kept calling, and when I finally answered, she yelled at me. So you finally pick up, you terrible daughter-in-law. It seemed she hadn't heard anything from my husband. I calmly told her, I've recorded this call and all our recent calls. The fact that I lent you $3,000 and that you acknowledged it are all recorded. Denying it now is pointless. Why not just pay me back? Hearing this, my mother-in-law hung up without saying a word. Maybe she realized that arguing was useless. For me, it wasn't just about the money, it was about getting back at these people who treated me so badly. As a result, my husband lost the condo and had to move back to his mother's house. After being kicked out, his affair partner left him too. He tried reaching out to various people, including coworkers and clients, but his reputation was ruined when news of his infidelity got out. He eventually lost his job and had to take on several part-time jobs with much lower pay. This was the consequence of misusing my money. Now, he's working day after day to pay the compensation. My mother-in-law also had to stop gambling and started working part-time to pay back the money I demanded. Fortunately, the constant contact from them stopped, and I now enjoy peaceful days. With the night shifts fully staffed, I was moved to day shifts. During this time, my manager called me in and said, "I appreciate your hard work during the night shifts. You really supported the store. The higher-ups have noticed, and there's an offer for a full-time position. How about taking this chance to work full-time?" Transitioning from part-time to a full-time position was a very welcome opportunity. I feel hopeful about the future. From having nothing but a middle school education, I've now risen to a fulfilling full-time job, and I'm excited for what's to come.